Formula 1 is back on track, sort of. After a hiatus of more than 3 months, 102 days to be exact, we saw an F1 car hitting a circuit again thanks to Mercedes' 2-day test at Silverstone with a 2018 car. It ended a long absence that stretched back to the final day of pre-season testing at the end of February thanks to the late cancellation of the Australian Grand Prix just before free practice started. The escalation of a global crisis since then indefinitely suspended the Formula 1 season, but with a start date of July 5th now set in stone, teams and drivers are escalating their preparations for the Austrian Grand Prix. That includes blowing off the cobwebs and getting up to speed with new, complicated safety protocols that must be followed to allow Formula 1 to return. So here's what the end of F1's 102-day absence has revealed. We've known for a while that Formula 1 will have strict measures to adhere to when the season begins in Austria, as part of a so-called biosphere plan created by the rulemakers. Charter planes have been arranged, there's a limit on team personnel, and everybody attending will be tested before travelling and then every 2 days after arrival. But exactly how the teams would work when they got there was something of a mystery. We knew there'd be paddock bubbles, separating the teams from each other, but also implementing intra-team clusters for groups that cannot practice social distancing while working. Mercedes' test gave us the first look at what that new normal will be, at least in the European races. Mercedes rearranged its setup in and around the garage to try to keep people separate where possible, and we had the first visual example of the clusters of personnel who can't avoid working closely to one another, such as any of the mechanics who must handle the turnaround of the car. Staff were seen wearing masks on any occasion they could not maintain a 2-metre distance from one another, and when strapping the driver in, and therefore getting even closer than normal, the team member in question was wearing a protective visor over the mask as well. Mercedes' test was primarily to practice the use of these new social distancing protocols, wearing protective equipment, and adhering to any of the restrictions that have been stipulated for race weekends in a monster 18,000-word book of guidelines created by the FIA. It was therefore a valuable opportunity to get used to these safety provisions while minimising the impact of working practices while running the cars. Bottas admitted he had to do quite a lot of waiting while the team practiced its protocols, but the effort appears to have been immediately worthwhile. He said the team seemed pretty comfortable with the new measures, and trackside engineering director Andrew Shovelin confirmed it was an important exercise. The entire team had been tested and tested negative prior to the Silverstone run-in, and Shovelin said, "We're quite confident with those procedures that we can keep the team safe and the sport can continue and we'll have some successful races come next month." Drivers and teams have had to spend most of the hiatus adhering to lockdown measures, preventing many from getting back on track until very recently. Lando Norris and Alex Albon have tested Formula 3 cars, while Ferrari's Charles Leclerc has got behind the wheel using a shifter car in Italy. Bottas has been arguably the most creative, combining karting with rallying at home in Finland for much of the lockdown. But there is no direct replacement for a Formula 1 car, and while nobody will drive a representative 2020 machine in a full-blown test before Austria, even getting behind the wheel of an old car clocks a clear benefit. Hamilton, who hasn't driven anything since testing, said he didn't feel like I ever left the water after finally driving again 103 days after his pre-season ended. He said that every time you take a big break, you always wonder whether you can still drive, and joked, "It's a good feeling to know that I can." But more seriously, he acknowledged that he feels ready and fit having got back behind the wheel, a verdict that Bottas declared as well. The Finn said everything felt normal after a few laps, and after his ongoing preparation, it gave me a good confidence that I'm ready for the first race. Ferrari's already planning its own private test for Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel, like Mercedes using an old car. But other teams are planning to make use of leftover filming day allowances to put their 2020 cars on track. Racing Point is the only team to publicly say it's going to do exactly that and will run at Silverstone next week. Filming days are restricted to 100 kilometres of running using promotional tyres, but such a day will still allow the team to get used to working within the new safety protocols. Plus, there will be the added bonus of effectively shaking down the 2020 car again after such a long absence. Other teams aren't so fortunate. McLaren, for example, cannot join its fellow teams in running at a track as it doesn't have any more filming days to use and doesn't have the engine it needs to run an older car either. But Mercedes has shown us it's clear that any team that can do something to get up to speed with the new protocols and get rid of any rust after such a long absence, will find a benefit in doing so. As Formula 1 teams take their second attempt at pre-season preparations to the next level, are you expecting some teams to be out of sorts at the first race? Do you think there should be an official test of some kind before Austria? Let us know in the comments below, drop us any questions you might have about how the season's restarting, and if you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more insight as Formula 1 prepares for the season to finally begin.